So why do you think it's important for organizations or different companies of that nature to just have conversations, like tough conversations, just about, racial inequities inside the workplace, or just having these conversations that allow people of color to feel comfortable in the space? Why do you think it's important? And I'm going to challenge you to, because I know you could go off on this on a tangent. Give me 2 sentences.
It's important because whether you're talking about it or not, like microaggressions and discrimination and all that is happening in your workplace. Just because you're well-intentioned does not mean that it's not happening.
Hey guys, and we are back with another episode of The Future Starts Here, Say As Buffalo podcast. Today we are here with Stephanie Peete. Stephanie has been here for about, 8.5 years. She started as a FSS, then she was a part of the internship and career pathway. She's an outreach coordinator. I think I'm saying that right.
Nope.
Oh, nope. I'm not saying it right.
It's fine. All right. It was a long title.
It was a long title.
Yeah.
She got some long titles. and then she got into the apprenticeship work. And now she's at the top as the director of workforce development.
Yeah.
Stephanie, how are you doing today?
I am great. How are you? I got a lot done this morning, so that's always a good day for me.
I'm doing good. She said she got a lot done. She said she got a lot done because this is Mrs. Do It All. I promise you. I just ran down all the titles for you guys, but this is Mrs. Do It All. She is a director here, but she also co-owns a bookstore called Second Chapter Bookstore. It's online, and she also does many other events throughout the community, so you guys make sure you check it out. So, Stephanie, talk about the transitions that you've had throughout the few years being here at SAS.
Yeah, so I came in as a family support specialist, doing child welfare and case management in the schools. Did that for a few years, and then at one of our town halls, Dave was talking about we're going to be doing some internship work. And like a year out, there's going to be some new roles created. I was just like, yes, I want to do that. So I eventually did apply. And became one of the supervisors for the program, working on the employer relationship. So going like a complete 180 from working with like families in their home and in the schools to being like completely business facing. So it was a weird transition, but I actually love this space. So I'm glad it happened.
Yeah, and I could tell you love it. You've thrived throughout the years. I was like, when you said you were an FSS, I was like, how did you start off as an FSS and then get all the way to where you are now? But I think that we can just attest to that's just how the Say Yes culture is. Like, you may start somewhere at Say Yes, but then you end up somewhere where you didn't even see yourself at a few years ago.
Absolutely.
And I think that's amazing because you just have a lot of people that you can lean on for support and learn things from. So talk about, I'm jealous every time I hear you say it. You say Dave is your mentor. How do you get Dave as your mentor?
Well, so we had, the Leadership 101 program that Colin runs now. There was a first edition of it pre-pandemic. Was it pre-pandemic? Yeah, pre-pandemic. And we were the first cohort to go through it. And in that program, you got to select a senior staff member as a mentor. So you got to pick, I think, like your first 2 or maybe your top 3. So I put Dave at the top of mine. I figured everybody else would also pick him. I was like, I don't know if I'll get him. I'm going to pick Dave. And nobody else picked him, so I got Dave. So that's how it happened. So I worked with him monthly and learned a lot. He put me, in connection with a lot of people to help me grow and, like, really challenge me. He has really high expectations. So, yeah, that's how it happened.
Well, talk a little bit more about that relationship that you guys have. Like, I think that's amazing. Like, for the CEO of an organization to be a mentor of, like, a director. You don't see that too often in other workspaces. Yeah. So, like, what is that like?
I mean, I think early on I kind of spoke out about the things I wanted to do at SAS, not just with Dave, but with other people. And like you mentioned before, the culture here is very much if you are ambitious and you have interest in other things, there's opportunities to test things out, like work on other projects. I know you work on a little bit of everything. So you have an interest and, you want to grow, there's opportunity to do so. So, Dave and I, because of working, in the business-facing space, I leaned a lot on Dave transitioning into that role. And then having, to work on certain projects with him. And now he's my direct supervisor. I report to him now.
Full circle.
Yeah, full circle.
Full circle. So, So I called you Mrs. Do It All because you do everything.
I don't.
You do.
I'm learning that I can't.
Yeah, I'm learning that too. You do it all. So I also have another nickname for you. So it's Mrs. Shifting Narrative of People of Color in Workspaces. So how does that align with the position that you have now? What's some things that you've been working on or have been thinking about? If you could talk about it, what's some things that you've been working on lately that you can like kind of intertwine those things?
Yeah, so it started off really with our internship work. We came into that space, Johanna and I, thinking that the bulk of the work would be on the student side, helping them, with the soft skills, which I really hate that term, helping them transition into professional workspaces and all those things. But we realized that there's just so much work on the employer side. Buffalo is really segregated. A study released a few years ago by the Partnership for the Public Good said that like 91.8% of the private sector workforce was white at the time. Haven't seen any data since then, so I'm not sure if it has changed much. Probably hasn't. But there was just a really big opportunity for us to come into the space with our employers to say, here are some best practices for working with young people of color and to really help them in their journey. Because they're all, either starting out or maybe they're more advanced, but every organization is different. So we take on that responsibility of holding those conversations and providing professional development in real time to help with our students. And that has grown to like an official body of people. We call it our employer think tank. But it started off with Say Yes during the pandemic, and we held 4 virtual offerings to really help employers with best practices for working with our kids. So we did one with like creating equity from the C-suite, and that was with Dave and John Summers from Harmac. We did one with BMOC. So that was about specifically engaging and supporting young men of color in the workplace. We did one on moving from ally to advocate, and that was with Joyelle Hackett from the VA, who was amazing. And then our last one was connecting students of color to corporate internships. And that was, we had a Cornell High Road fellow that summer, Libby, who did a really amazing report. And so we did an offering on that. And now that's grown to an initiative that we work with other organizations, so like Invest Buffalo Niagara, BCAT, Tech Buffalo. We have folks in Narden on our planning team, and now we hold these things in person, and it's supported through the Oshai Foundation. So, yeah. So it turned into like a passion. We did it with no budget, no nothing. We're going to just do these. And now we actually have like funding and a body of people to help us carry the work, and it has grown. We're doing another one on July 27th at Seneca 1. So really exciting.
Sure you guys go.
It's invite only though.
So, wow. Yeah. Sorry. Okay, never mind.
That one's exclusive. We have a strategy behind that one.
Can I get an invite?
Yeah. But yeah, it's like, you kind of, in this work, I found like new passions, and I think that's like the best part of it. Like, you come into it thinking you're going to be doing this type of work, or you come into it because you want to do what the job description says, so to speak. But then when you start doing the work, you find out like all these other pieces too, and you're able to like build that into your role.
So why do you think it's important for organizations or different companies of that nature to just have conversations, like tough conversations, just about, racial inequities inside the workplace, or just having these conversations that allow people of color to feel comfortable in the space? Why do you think it's important? And I'm going to challenge you to, because I know you could go off on this on a tangent. Give me 2 sentences.
It's important because whether you're talking about it or not, like microaggressions and discrimination and all that is happening in your workplace. Just because you're well-intentioned does not mean that it's not happening.
There it is. I didn't think you were going to say anything. I thought you were going to say more. So you got it narrowed down now. So, you go and get what you're saying. So at these events and these talks, what are some things that you've taken away?
I will say the things that I've been taken away from these, it's hard to really narrow that down. One, that they need to keep happening. And that, 2, for organizations, my biggest recommendation for them would be, if you're coming to an event like this, put something into practice before you come to another one. I think a lot of times folks will just keep coming to these, these events, and it sounds good, but if you're not going to operationalize what you're learning, then the learning is lost. So yeah, I love hosting these spaces, but I also like attending other people's opportunities to like dig deeper into equity, because no matter where you're standing, like your perspective is always going to be limited.
So I have a question. This is probably my second to last question. Okay. You know, I was just so excited to have this interview with you. Like, you know, we don't get to talk much because, you know, you're always busy. So what is the most difficult part about being a woman in leadership for you? Like, you do so much. Like, what is the most difficult part? I feel like a lot of people, like, expect us to either fail or expect us to just do too much or we can't handle it, or they expect to just not be able to handle what we do. Mm-hmm. So, like, you know, where do you find the balance, and just, like, how do you do it?
So when I first started as an internship supervisor, and I would talk to Dave about this, I was always, like, the youngest in the room, usually the only woman, and almost always the only Black woman. And I would get a lot of, like, support and, like, praise from Say Yes, but in those spaces where I am not with my Say Yes colleagues, I would internalize the idea that I wasn't supposed to be there because I didn't feel reflected in the people who were in the room.
Well, I'm feeling that right now.
So you have to understand, like, that you have to, like, not internalize it. You have to, like, just, like, I'm just here, and this is why I'm here, because there's no one that looks like me, so this is why I'm supposed to be here. But, like, really developing a core group of people who you can vent to and who can support you is so crucial. I tell everybody, like, you can go to professional development programs and all that, and honestly, I've done most of them. What you really need to do, you need to get plugged into the right group of people. You already are, who can really, like, give you perspective, give you suggestions, and, like, hold you up. Because if you're isolated trying to do this work, you're not gonna last.
Yeah. It is. It's difficult being in those spaces. So I definitely see what you mean. But I'm happy that, you know, I have people like you to, you know, come and talk to and just like, you know, get advice from, because it is difficult being in those spaces and being so young. It's like, oh my gosh, like, am I supposed to be here?
No, you're supposed to be there, and your perspective is needed.
Yeah, like, even for example, for me, like, I was you know, I was a Black Achiever recently, you know, for the 50th annual year, and I felt out of place. I was like, why am I here? And honestly, at that time, I don't even know if I can say this on this, but, you know, I mean, you can cut it out if I can't. But at that time, you know, actually, so I was in the back with the other honorees, and somebody actually thought I was a guest. And I think that actually, like, made me feel even more insecure, because I'm like, okay, like, I already feel like I shouldn't be back here. But the fact that somebody was like, oh, you have to go out there. I think it was Jamila was like, oh, no, she's an honoree. Because I was like, did they just think
I mean, success looks a certain way for a lot of people, especially in Buffalo. I feel like you can cut this out if you don't want it to be in here. But, like, especially in Buffalo, like, for Black people, there's, like, historically, it's only been, like, a few who are able to break through. And I feel like now there's a lot more of us who are in these spaces, like, making things happen. So the landscape looks different. But I know coming up, being, like, your age, you know, being in my early 20s, it was, like, there were only a few who were allowed to, like, be at these tables. But now we're kind of, like, kicking the doors in. So it looks different. Yeah. It's a good thing. Yeah.
It is. I was excited to be there, but I just, you know, it's always that imposter syndrome that you feel. It's like, you know, oh, like, you're young, like, you know, you shouldn't be here. It's like everybody else is talking about what they have done, and I'm like, dang. Like,
so I have taken imposter syndrome out of my vocabulary. I now subscribe to imposter treatment. We're treated like imposters, which then we internalize. So it's not something that you're developing within yourself. You're just responding to how you've been treated from certain circles.
Wow, I didn't think about it like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw it somewhere on LinkedIn, so now it's stuck.
Well, thank you, LinkedIn. Well, I don't want to keep you for too long. So is there anything that you want to talk about that I didn't ask you about today?
No, I think this was good. It was short and sweet.
Yeah, short
and sweet. We got to the good parts.
Yes, we did. So thank you for coming here and, you know, doing this interview. I really enjoyed this conversation. We got to talk after this. Yeah. There's so much I have to say now that you talked about it. And I'm going to start using imposter treatment. Yeah. You know, you guys start using imposter treatment instead of imposter syndrome. It's how people are portraying us. It's not how we portray ourselves.
Right.
So, you know, you can follow us on Facebook at Say Yes Buffalo, or on Instagram at Say Yes Buffalo, or go to our website at sayyesbuffalo.org. So see you next time.